And welcome back for another episode of the Ghost and Friends YouTube channel. Fun one here, talking a little bit of a rivalry. It's not set in stone, and it would probably help if Texas beat Georgia. But let's look at Texas, Georgia, and how things kind of started off on such a hot note between the two schools. Occasion took over in 2021. Obviously, Kirby Smart at Georgia for quite a while. John is not a coward. John is busy. He's being a good dad right now, and that's why Georgia John is not here with us tonight. But we'll chirp Georgia John soon. I hope he is watching though. Shout out, buddy. Thanks for being here, Joshy. But yeah, so Sarkisian gets to Texas 2021. First thing that he's trying to do, flip recruiting, right? You want to build the roster that you need to have to compete in the SEC, because I don't care what anyone will tell you. I feel like most Texas fans would agree. But when Texas hired Steve Sarkisian, they knew, and Coach Sark knew, that Texas was going to go to the SEC. I don't think that big of a move, would have been kept under wraps, and that they would have, hired that next coach without that knowledge that they'd be moving to, the biggest and best conference in college football history. So you got to flip recruiting. You got to some of these kids that you're losing in state to the Ohio States, to the Georgias, to the Alabamas, Florida schools, etc. You got to rein those kids in. And not only that, you got to break state lines in the deep South. You got to go into Louisiana. You got to go into Georgia. You got to go into Alabama. You got to find some of these big time defensive tackles, some of these big time defensive recruits, because that is always what seems to be, the real difference on the football field when it comes to Big 12 football, and even Big 10 football, ACC. The SEC looks different, especially amongst the defensive line, and offensive lines are normally a little bit bigger, a bit nastier as well. So what does Texas do? From the jump, obviously Sark has done a very, very good job recruiting at Texas and continues to do so. One thing that he had to do was pull in some offensive linemen. Okay. He does that early. All right. We're going to fast forward to June of 2021, summer before. Texas goes 5-7. And they pull the commitment of Arch Manning. A lot of people talk about Arch in Texas, and we forget, that Georgia was the number 2 in that recruitment. It was a true head-to-head win for Texas, and over Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, who were at the time, were the class of college football. Obviously 2 titles in a row will do that for you, but they hadn't won either one of those, I don't believe, yet, if my math is right. But so either way, Georgia had been recruiting very, very well, and had been doing so for a very long time. And so, these staffs, if Texas was going to get to the point of where they needed to be, they're going to have to do it with recruiting, and then development, and then success on the field. But point is, these 2 staffs were going to butt head to head. It was inevitable. And even before Sarkisian got to Texas, Tom Herman, we were going to head with Kirby, and I love that we were, because if you know that Georgia is in on a defensive recruit, that recruit's probably pretty damn good. And, so you trust I'm not saying you just sit there and carpet bomb anyone they offer, but I'm just saying I was happy to see Tom Herman go after some of the same kids that Georgia was going after, even if at the time maybe our hat didn't really belong in that ring. We didn't have as much to sell, but he was still putting forth the effort. Keely Ringo is a big one that goes back in my mind, a guy that I really wanted Texas to pull. Young man out of Arizona, obviously had the pick 6, the clincher, for Georgia, and then their first national title here in quite a while. The one that they got over King Saban in Alabama. Keely had the pick of Bryce Young, ran down the sideline as they were, I think they had an 8-point lead with like a minute and change left before Keely did that. But point is, these 2 staffs were always going to run into each other head to head on the recruiting trail. It was going to happen, man. Again, thank you guys in the comments. Appreciate y'all being here. Y'all get active. Let's talk Texas, Georgia. Yeah, I love when Orlando's here, man. This is really, really hard not to smile and laugh a lot. Kerr Diddy, wow. Yeah, so multiple head-to-head recruiting battles for these schools where they're the final two, options for a young man that's making this decision for the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it may be. But Arch is a big one. Arch is one. And if you don't think these coaches have a bit of, pride when they lose out on recruits, especially if it happens repetitively to certain staffs, they're going to do whatever they can to maybe remedy the situation or get one over on the other guys. It's just part of the nature. It really is. And no, they're not going to come out and say this, but these coaches, they're prideful about recruiting. They sure are, especially those ones that do it really damn well. But fast forward to a little bit of what we talked about last week. Texas they're inside the state of Georgia in recruiting right now. The connections are good. The ends are good. Obviously, there's relationship building with Texas and high school coaches there and all the other people that you would need to, maybe pull off some of these recruits. But Georgia's not going to go quietly. They came into Texas and pulled our, two of our better kids last cycle, and it's going to go back and forth. So point is, before the head-to-head on the football field, ever took place, they're battling, they're trading blows on the recruiting, in the recruiting world, pretty often. And when Texas goes in and takes a Justice Terry, who, I think that shocked everybody, even though a lot of Texas fans felt good about it. But even, the people are really, really in the know, that decision was, made very, very last minute, just never felt like it was all Texas. It felt like we won that in the very, very end. And so Kirby's going to be prideful, man. Like, no doubt. He's going to want to defend, his in-state recruiting, and A&M is doing it too. We talked about that a little last week. And again, Georgia has come into the state for a long time, so the staffs are very familiar with one another. They probably had plenty of discussions about one another with kids. And I'm not saying they're sitting here negative recruiting, but I'm sure there's conversations being had. But then you go when you move forward to last year on the football field. A lot of people remember the Sugar Bowl 2018 season, 2019, New Year's Day when the game was played, and Bevo and Uga and their little skirmish. Georgia didn't want to be there. All right, Texas fans, it's okay to say it. Georgia wanted no part of being in the Sugar Bowl against Sam Ehlinger and the Horns. We were riled up, got up 3 scores, stayed up 3 scores till the fourth quarter. Georgia makes it a little bit closer. But us Texas fans, we talked a little bit after that game. We've always, or most of us at the time, were very, very much in defense of the Big 12 and the product that was put out, out on the playing surface. And we didn't want to concede that the SEC was the best conference, which was quite obvious and inevitable. And hey, we grow, all right, but it helps to be a part of the conference. I'm sure Georgia fans probably, they didn't want to hear all that, but that was nothing compared to obviously what we just saw in 2024. October 19th, Georgia comes to Austin, a very, very anticipated game. Texas undefeated at the time, number 1 team in the country. First time we've been ranked number 1, felt like forever. And Georgia, let's call it what it is. They stomped a mud hole through our chest. They were tougher than we were. They were smarter than we were. Smarter than we were with the football. Their decision making, a quarterback didn't have to be flawless because the defense played so well. But again, I thought our defense played pretty damn well, all things considered. Georgia started inside Texas territory 3, 4, 5 times. I don't like to think about that night too many times. Hell of a way to celebrate a birthday, guys. But they owned us, all right? It's okay to say it. Georgia absolutely took it to Texas. And that's a good point, a good segue, Nash. And this is how rivalries start to develop. Georgia absolutely curb stomped us. Georgia whips us up and down. And so what do you think our players, I bet Georgia's mentioned almost every damn day, definitely every week in that locker room. That doesn't happen again. That's an outlier. That is not who we are. I can't wait to potentially play them in the SEC championship again. And then you get that opportunity. You get your moment at revenge. You get Georgia not in their house, but in their house, essentially, because they've been to 10 of the 11 last SEC title games. Oh, Lord, here he is, my guy, Chris Allen. Shout out, Mr. Chris Allen, helping out with graphics for the show, doing some things behind the scenes. And speaking on that very, very quickly, in the next couple of days, we're going to drop a couple of announcements. We will have some young ladies joining the channel and a young man as well that will be breaking down specific conference talk. Of course, all relevant topics across college football are welcome and will be discussed. But we do have some things cooking. I won't be present on every single show that they do, but all conferences will be covered, and a few random teams, not random, but a few particular teams will be covered. We'll have weekly content for them as well. But yeah, Nash, I'm with you, man. The defense played great in Austin. They really, really did. The one thing that really hurt from the defensive standpoint was we go make that game 23-15 after getting in a 23-0 hole. You know, obviously Texas is back in the game. We've got Georgia pinned 3rd and long inside their own 20. You know, we ended up giving a touchdown drive there late in the 3rd quarter, and that one, you know, that was kind of it. You know, that was all she wrote. And so proud of the defense, but yeah, moving on forward, you know those guys wanted to play Georgia again. There's no way they knew that wasn't the team that they were. They absolutely knew, you know, they had a lot more in on than that, and they had to show these guys that, you know, that's the new Texas. This is the new Texas. The Texas that they saw on the 19th, that's that old stuff that we saw all the time. Play a real opponent, have a chance to really do something. You get just absolutely bodied. All right. And I'm not disrespecting the season that 2024 Texas had, but Michigan they didn't have a pulse when Texas played them last year. Oklahoma didn't have a quarterback when Texas played them last year, and they had a team that half of them had quit by then. I mean, especially on the offensive side. And that defense was good for spurts, but behind that offense, every defensive pride breaks, it breaks at some point if that offense is just doing absolutely nothing. We saw that into the first half. Quintravion Weisner, 2 touchdowns, or a touchdown and a half, we'll give him. We did have the fumble, Silas Bolden shout out. But, that, in my opinion, Georgia was like the first real opponent, you know, that we had last year. And that was the prove it game. And I'm sure there's some people that felt otherwise or similarly. Sorry. But then when we get to December and the SEC title game, you're in Atlanta, you're ready to rock. And I thought Texas played well enough to win that football game. Obviously, kicking issues were a thing that really hampered us there. Shout out to Gunnar Stockton, came in and carried the Bulldogs. They definitely had more of an attitude when he was out there on the field. But again, man, just little things here or there. Missed field goals. Did we get a block on the Jahdae Barron pick 6? But at the end of the day, it's go Dogs. Georgia wins. You know, the Bulldogs have won another SEC title, and they were able to jump right back on Twitter and say, that's what it is. You're Georgia, or we're Georgia, you're Texas. And that's the last part that I was going to bring up was all the Twitter beef. The Twitter beef after the first game in Austin was pretty legendary. That's the first time I think I've ever just tapped out for a night. Normally I stand in there, I stand on the L's, they whip us around, and then the team comes and chirps, good game, you earned it. I'll make jokes about our own teams, but man, they broke me. They really did. Georgia was aggressive and loud, but that night, you could sense like, okay, this is the last time these teams probably meet up in the next couple of years. Obviously, we have the November matchup. They meet in the SEC title game. You have more recruiting battles. You have really funny, Georgia posters talking about our recruiting success and everything being NIL related and Lambeau related. And I think, man, Chris Allen, you Georgia dog, you tell me, I think that Georgia sensed, hey, maybe we have a chance to have our golden era of football. Maybe we have a chance to have our decade of dominance, like in Alabama from 2009 to 2020. I know it's more than a decade, but they were dominant. And then, hey, wait a second. Here's Texas. Here's a team that's been just flatlining and just not ever living up to expectations. Well, not even once, maybe in 11, 12, 13-year span. Just not once, always playing below capability, never having, the coaching figured out. And then all of a sudden we move to the SEC and Georgia's like, we've got another big time blue blood that we've got to potentially contend and deal with. And I think in the back of my minds, Georgia fans, they do know that Texas isn't going anywhere. And I'm not saying they should be afraid of us. I don't think that they are. But I think they know that they're going to, it'll be more of those SEC type championship games between the two programs, more so than we'll see the 30-15, Austin ass whipping that the Dogs gave us. And so with that being said, I'm again not saying they're scared of us, but I think that they do know that we're here and that we're not going anywhere. And I have all the respect in the world for Georgia's program. I don't think they're going anywhere. And when you look at Kirby and Texas, very, very similar on each coach's respective side of the ball. Texas, we've got a lot of turnover on the offensive side. We have a lot of guys who are unproven, but we have great anticipation that it's going to work out because we trust Sarkisian, right? We believe in his ability to recruit, coach, develop players that are going to go out there on the offensive side and do work. Well, then go to Kirby, and then there's a lot of you gonna, they'll be really, really good. They may have a hiccup along the way here or there, but I think they're very, very similar teams this year. And when you look at the matchup between the two in November, um, these two teams are going to have ample time to get their footing, to figure out who they are, their identities. And we know Kirby Smart's identity on defense. They're going to play hard nose. They're going to be a little bit, chaotic, a little exotic. They're going to out scheme you on most downs. They're going to stunt, twist, and they're just never going to sit there and make things just vanilla and ABC for you. That's not who the Georgia Bulldogs are. And I respect that, man. I appreciate and love hard defense. But I do think Texas will be a little bit better prepared for it next time we see this. The way that we were when we met in Atlanta, it didn't correlate into points. We moved the football. But you got to get in the end zone against a good team like Georgia and shout out. That's why teams that are really, really damn good defensively and don't give up a lot. That's normally when they stiffen up the most, is when they're pinned against their backs there in the red zone, and it's time to get a stop. And that's what Georgia did to us, man. Every time it seemed like we got inside the 20, 30-yard line there in Atlanta, they found a way, whether it be maybe missed kicks, man. I tell you what, it's hard not to think about them now. I did such a good job for not a long time. But tell me in the comments, what do you think? What do you guys, Georgia, Texas, next 5 years, as far as SEC titles, who would you take to win more in the next 5 years? It could be one, it could be two for each. What are you thinking? And this is a real fun question. I like to think that, Texas certainly, I would hope, it does enough to win an SEC title here in the next couple of years. But I do know that if we do, there's a really good chance that it's going through a Georgia, if potentially in Alabama. But I'm very excited to see Georgia and Bama go to it this year. There's almost no way in hell that I'll be taking Alabama to win that game again. I took them last year, but I just feel like Kirby probably spent a pretty good portion of the offseason just coming up with different clips and different quotes to get the Bulldogs fired up. So I don't think he can withstand another loss to the Tide just for his personal pride. That he owns everybody, and then he just has a little bit of an Alabama problem. Same way I guess we have a little bit of a Georgia problem. Mr. Allen says he thinks they enjoy the moment. The level of the SEC and college football as a whole is much higher than it was during the Bama dynasty. The East was cannon fodder for Bama. Yeah. Man, that it's crazy how, I will say this, Texas A&M had to sit there and play in the SEC West for all those years, and then Texas gets to come in year one, we're playing, obviously the divisions are gone, and we've got Vanderbilt from the East, we've got Kentucky from the East, we've got Florida, we've got Georgia. I think one more in there would have been from the old East division as well, but let's see here. I think it depends on the format holds with college football expanding, because then it depends on regular season scheduling. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we're going to have what would appear to be a lot more difficult schedule for the next 2 years, as I think what the schedules flip, don't they? So instead of Mississippi State, Florida, Kentucky, we'll have a Tennessee, Missouri, I know, but they have been winning 10 games, and an LSU potentially, so yeah, that could definitely matter. And if this is a great one, as long as Alabama doesn't win any of the fives, I'm fine with that. Lounge, one day we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about a Mississippi State football title in the SEC. It's going to happen one day, Lounge. I'm speaking it into existence right now, my man, because I need it to happen for you. The Bulldogs got to come around, but I'll say this, man. If Alabama, that front seven is going to be loaded. Georgia, I think that by November, they're going to be pretty dang loaded, but that's going to be a hell of a matchup, man. And Georgia, with that schedule, they really can't afford. They did lose to Ole Miss, they did lose to Alabama, but things kind of worked out to where they still got in with 2 losses, and we probably see a lot of parity throughout the conference. I'm kind of spoiler prediction here. I don't have anyone going undefeated in conference play in the SEC. Yeah, I mean, half of the people where we hang out, Lounge, they are on drugs, so that's okay, buddy. But Mississippi State, I mean, it'll happen before an A&M, and I hope it does. One day. Y'all can't do that to Lounge, man. Give him some hope. Give him a little bit of Bulldog. He's got his baseball title, so maybe he doesn't even need it. He's good with just his baseball title. Good for Lounge. But again, thanks for being here, guys. Throw a like on the video if you don't mind. If you haven't subbed to the channel, please do that. Free, quick, and easy. It doesn't cost you a thing. Takes nothing from you. Throw on the alerts if you want to get, I try to get shows planned out and put them up today a few hours before we go live, just so that if anybody sees it wants to make sure, in case you're not on Twitter and I can't tell you about it. But again, we are on Twitter having a good time talking college football all day, every day, pretty much, at 40 Acre Vibes. You can see it there on the screen. I am going to go ahead and let you guys go. I hope y'all had a good time with this. Just a little bit of talking between Texas and Georgia and how it kind of heated up so quick. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And I know that, see, I knew there's an Aggie out there. Got in trouble with Mr. Drew. Hey, if there are any other Aggies watching out there, go check out Drew's new line, his new collab with Roback. I believe he said the Aggie merch is dropping tomorrow. Well, Drew got me in trouble with that Roback post. I retweeted it and got called lame AF by a Texas fan for the retweet. But we love our friends, and we will continue to support our friends. So shout out to you, Drew, and proud of all the work you're doing, brother. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll be back tomorrow night. Again, next couple of days, announcing of a couple of folks we have hired to join the channel and drop some more content. One more question here. I don't want to leave this one unanswered for my good friend. Be curious to see if there's a similar Sark Kirby dynamic as there was a Saban Smart. It's potential, man, but obviously Kirby and Saban, they worked together for such a long time. I don't know what type of relationship Sark and Kirby had when Sark had his short stint at Alabama, but I hope this is a thing we're talking about, because if we're talking about them and a real heated rivalry, it probably means we're talking about two of the better coaches and one of the bigger games each and every year whenever it does inevitably happen. But I tell you this, man, a lot of people are downplaying Georgia this year. A lot of people, non-believers. The offense is going to be a lot better. I think Dylan Bell's going to have kind of a breakout campaign. Oscar Delp's a problem. Watch out, man. They're going to have a little more attitude in the run game. I think they'll a little more commitment to being nasty. And I think we see a similar thing out of Texas. Georgia and Texas will be, I'm not spoiling the predictions, but they'll be definitely up pretty high in those SEC standings. Mr. Nash, Kirby's getting pissed at Saban for keeping on picking Texas. I missed that one, man. When did, I guess, was this last year when our 2 games to Saban picked Texas? Kind of funny, but I mean, I get it, because him and Sark are pretty tight too. And hey, Saban's just picking who he thinks is going to win the game. He is a gaslighter. He's a great one. He's terrific at it, man. And don't act like he's the only coach in college football that loves to, though. That's the thing, is these coaches, man, they're really, really good at that. Really, really good. It's funny, though, when people want to get on Sark for screaming at some random employee at the Alamo Bowl who God knows the content or the context of why that happened, but they're all about Kirby trolling the Longhorns and getting all riled up. I want my coach to be fiery. I want him to be like that. So anyways, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I'm going to let y'all get out of here. I got some family in town, and go hang out with the nephew. Hook 'em horns. Appreciate it. Like the video. Tell your friends. Everyone have a great